Welcome to my sewing room. We are going to have so much fun today. The theme of the show today is sewing little boys' button-on pants. And do we ever have some cute clothes to share with you? The first little boy's suit has a wonderful little train, the little white suit with wonderful bright blue piping and little bright blue button-on pants. The next little boy's suit is a much dressier version. It is made out of handkerchief linen and has a little bit of tatting, a little trim that appears right below the collar, and then a pale, pale yellow button-on suit. The next little suit has trucks on it. Don't you know most little boys would like to wear a suit with these big yellow and blue and red and green trucks on it. The shirt is white with its wonderful primary colors, and the little boy button-on pants, which you're going to learn how to make in just a few minutes, are bright red. For a dressy occasion such as a portrait or for Easter Sunday, this beautiful yellow handkerchief linen suit is just perfect, and the collar has a little bit of gathered trim around it. For another very special occasion, this is a really precious little boy's suit with a little white smocked collar, a little bit of lace with ribbon run through it, and the stark white linen pants to go with it. I think our little Ben would really like these antique cars also. This has beautiful, brightly colored cars on it, and then a really good looking little blue pair of pants that go with it. These are not really that hard to do, and you're going to learn how to do them in just a few minutes. The last little boy's suit I'm going to share with you has scarecrows and some corn growing in a field. Now, if that isn't cute, and then it has the most adorable little green and white striped pants. Come with me over to the technique board, where I've invited my friend Kathy McMakin, who is the author of 3 books on heirloom sewing, as well as the construction editor for Sew Beautiful magazine. I've asked Kathy to share with you how easy it is to make little boy button-on pants.
Button-on suit pants are very easy to make. Let's look at these. The ones we have today are blue on the outside, and the lining, is a lighter color. So it will be easy to show you which is the outside and which is the lining. We'll slip these back on, and let's look at the lining of the pants. The lining of the pants consists of 2 backs and 2 fronts. The first thing that we'll do to construct the pants is we'll stitch this front seam together, and then we'll stitch these 2 side seams together, stopping at these little dots on each side. Now this is the lining, and then we'll go to the outer part of the pants and we'll do the most identical thing. We'll stitch the front seam, and then we'll stitch each of the side seams together up to the little dot. This is the placket in the pants that are on each side of the pants, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Before we finish construction, we're going to stitch in the darts in the back of the pants. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put this piece on top of our lining piece so that we end up with 2 identical pieces that are on top of each other, right sides together. So if you'll look at this, you can see that there's the outer part of the pants and the lining of the pants. The outer part is going to be blue and the inner part is ecru. Here we have stitched across the top of the pants, down the placket, and across the placket to that little dot that we stopped on the side. Then we stitch across the top of the pants, right here, down this side, and then we do an identical stitching on the other side of the pants. When we come to the next step, you can see that this creates a tube from one side to the other. So you can actually stick your hand inside this in between the lining and the outer part of the pants. Now the next step shows how we're going to pull one side through to the other side. on here, this has already been pulled through, and we're going to show you how that's done in just a few minutes at the sewing machine. So you pull one side through to the other side, and then we have almost a horseshoe shape that we're going to sew in. We start down at the crotch, we sew up to a certain point, we back stitch, we leave an opening of about 3 inches or so. Then we start again and we stitch around the rest of the horseshoe and out the bottom of the crotch. And this actually creates another tube. And these are right at the bottom of our pants, and it's a tube right here. And I'll show you, I'll stick my hand in here, where we can pull one side through to the other side. So you can see we've created another tube here. And then this is the tube that we've created, and we've pulled one side through to the other side, and it's almost like a magic trick. We're going to sew around the crotch, and then we turn it all through this little opening that we've left. We turn it all through this opening, and it turns in to these little button-on suit pants right here. So it really is almost like a magic trick. Now I'm going to show you just a few steps, more particular, how to turn these button-on pants. Okay? Now, when we start to sew, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to attach all of our front piece together, and then we'll attach our side pieces on both our fronts and our lining, so that we end up with that long piece of 2 fronts and then a back on each side. Okay? Now to stitch those side seams together, remember how we started at the bottom and we stitched to the dot? This will leave us enough room for our placket on the sides of our pants. We have to leave these because this is how our little boys can get their pants on and off. Once you have your whole front part of your pants created, your outer part, then you also have to do the same thing for the lining as we showed you on the boards earlier. So what we've already done for you is we've stitched across the top of the pants, down to the placket on the back, and then we just push this away and so that we can start stitching at the dot again and stitch up around the top, and we pull this away again on this side so that we can get to the top side of the back of our pants. Then we stitch our 2 hems in the bottom of our pants so that we've created that tube again. So this is the tube that we've created. We slide our hand in, and like we said earlier, it's a lot easier to make these pants in the beginning when you are using 2 different colors, one color for the lining and one color for the outer. That way, if it happens to get twisted when you pull one side through to the other, you'll be able to tell. So we want to line up the outside part of our pants, our outer fabric, and our lining fabric so that we're ready to stitch in that U. Now we're going to pull these over, the ones we've already stitched. We'll move these out of the way so that we can see again how we stitch in that U. So you start here and you back stitch, and then you stitch all the way down to the end of the crotch. Then you start again at the top, skipping about 3 inches, and then you start again, back stitch, and complete the rest of that U. This will create the second tube. Now before we pull this side through to this side, we need to clip the curves of that back crotch seam. So if you will slide your hand in, here again we're going to pull the lining through to the outer, and we're going to match the lining seam and the outer seam, opening up all of our seam allowances all at the same time. Now I'll reach over here and get the piece that we already have pinned together with the lining and the outer already stitched, and we're just going to sew in a circle. And we're just going to complete this circle, and then we'll turn everything through the opening so that you will be able to see our magic trick for the day. And sometimes it's a little harder to sew the smaller size pants. These size pants we're demonstrating on are a size 2. So they're a little bit easier to sew, but when you get down to 6-month size, they might be a little bit more difficult to sew in a circle, but you can do it. Now we have those sewn in a circle, and now all we have to do is find our opening that we left. Let's come back here and find our opening that we left in our lining, and you just watch how this works. And you'll look like you have these pants in a wad, but you just keep turning them and turning them and turning them, and then voila. You'll have to take a point turner and stick it in through that little opening. But then can you see how they really do turn into a pair of little button-on suit pants? So once they're all pressed out and everything, they'll look exactly like these. So you see how easy it is to make button-on suit pants. Now Martha has a beautiful pillow that's made a lot the same way for the perfect little boy in your family.
I think this is the cutest pillow I've ever seen in my life to be used in the nursery for a little boy. I just want to share with you how to make it and how cute it is. Look at this pillow. It looks like some little boy pants have been just buttoned onto a little fat pillow, which is exactly what it is. We've used little porcelain sheep buttons, and you see these little points in the front. Well, many little boy pants, and especially those around the 1890s, 1900s, 1910s, they had these little points in the front, and let me turn this pillow around. See how cute it is? It goes straight in the back, just like those little antique pillows with little sheep buttons. Now, let me share with you that what I think would be really nice, it would be for you to take your sewing machine and stitch in the name of the little boy that you made this as a gift for, and maybe the date he was born right there using those wonderful built-in alphabets in your sewing machine. Now, what I would like to share with you right now is a quick and easy method for putting this adorable piping in that goes all the way around the top of the little boy pants. First of all, you're going to pin the piping to the fashion fabric, and then you're going to stitch along the points after you pin it all the way along the fashion fabric. Next, you're going to come in here and clip those seams pretty closely and down to the stitching line, because those points are kind of going to make a pretty big curve. Next, after you get your lining to your pants in, go ahead and get your lining pulled up like this, and then stitch the piping to the lining following this stitching line right along here, the first stitching line you just made. And then remember, when Kathy turned the pants right side out, you go in here once again and find the little hole and turn the pants right side out, and then slip them on the pillow. And this is so cute, people. This is really a button and a buttonhole that has been stitched on there, and it really does look like little boy pants. Next, I have a perfectly adorable craft for you that is so easy, anybody can make it. I always love to look at those expensive mail order catalogs, you know, the kind that comes to your house sometimes in abundance. I'm very fascinated at the home decorating where the use of wreaths are used all over a house to decorate. And I have a couple of ideas for you, and these will not be very expensive. You know, some of the prices on those wreaths are $35 to $150. I think you'll like this one that you're going, or these two that you're going to make, a lot better than the prices on some of those. The first wreath I think is absolutely precious. It is covered with buttons. It's a moss wreath. You buy the moss base at a craft store. It's covered with all kinds of wonderful buttons and baby blue ribbon, and then a little ribbon is used to hang it with. Now, let me share with you how easy it is to make one of these wreaths. This is truly a project that you just have the buttons and the glue. All right, the moss wreath, the little heart wreath, looks something like this. Then you get yourself just a collection of neat little buttons, and you know what? There is the cutest little jar that you can use. It's called a mayonnaise jar. Now, that's not too fancy, is it? Put your buttons in the jar, and if you have extra buttons, put a little crocheted top and a little bit of ribbon around it, and that makes a cute little jar to hold your buttons. Okay, you get your wreath, and you simply glue the buttons on, wrap a little bit of ribbon around it, and that, to me, is an adorable project, and one that actually would be a very nice gift also. Now then, I have another interesting wreath that I think is very pretty, and this one is one where you can use your scraps of lace and ribbons and fancy bands and just lace that you just don't know what to do with it, plus a few other materials. Here is the wreath I'm talking about. This one has beautiful pink and blue variegated ribbons and some little plaid ribbons. It has some netting fabric and some leftover pieces of lace, just scraps. Now this wreath is absolutely amazing. The way you make it, you're just not going to believe, and I'd just like to share it with you at this time. This wreath is done, let me move my buttons out of the way. This wreath is made, it is a straw wreath, and I'm going to leave the cellophane wrap. As a matter of fact, this wreath only cost $1.49. I'm going to leave the cellophane wrap on it, and this is absolutely magic how you put all of these pieces. The first piece I'm going to put in is a piece of leftover fancy band, just a little bit of lace. Now then, I'm going to take a screwdriver and simply poke it into this straw wreath. The next thing I'm going to put in is a piece of netting that I had left over. I cut squares, by the way. All of these are cut into squares. I'm going to stick the netting in like that. Then I'm going to use a little bit of leftover ribbon. I might even want to fold this into a bow, but you really don't have to. And I'll come in very close to that, and I'll take the screwdriver and stick that in. I think I'll use another piece of ribbon this time. It's just a short piece, maybe a scrap I had left over. I'll come in here and go just like this, and I begin to work all the way around the wreath, and this is very easy to do. By the way, I also like to use some scraps some squares of fabric. They're very easy to use too, and I did cut this with pinking shears. That gives you a nicer finish. Another way that I have seen this particular wreath as a gift for a little boy or a little girl or a nursery is to use these squares of fabric in shades of pink and blue and yellow and you know, the baby colors, and simply use little pieces of gingham. It is adorable done that way also. Now let's go back to this wreath. I'm going to move in beside the ribbon, take this screwdriver, and just put in another piece of fabric, and then when I finish it up, I will have a beautiful wreath. Maybe these are little girl room colors, but you could do one for any room of your house. I do hope you enjoy making these two wreaths. I do think a lot of people on your gift list would really enjoy receiving them. And now I have a really beautiful doll dress for you. This is one of the prettiest doll dresses we've had so far, I think. It is absolutely beautiful, pink Swiss batiste, a little round yoke, a very plain, high round yoke, and then the little smocking is absolutely precious. It has little smocked hearts on it with tiny little rosebuds and green leaves, and then the lace is attached to the bottom of the little smocked ruffle. Her little sleeve is beautiful with a little bit of smocking in a medium pink, and of course lace at the bottom of the sleeves. Now if you come down the dress, I love this little skirt. It is a scalloped skirt with a little rosebud at the top of each scallop, and this is a real easy technique, which I would like to share with you right now. Well, I'd like to share with you the collar technique first and then the hem technique. Now, there are three ways of attaching the lace to the collar. Let me share with you those three ways. Right here shows a pin stitch. That's a smaller hole than the entredot stitch. This method shows a wing needle entredot stitch, which has been used to attach the lace. And you have to use a stabilizer. This is a tearaway stabilizer when you use the wing needle entredot. And the last method you can use to attach the lace is simply using a zigzag, and this is called Martha's Magic or lace to flat fabric. Let me illustrate real briefly how you do that one. I'm not going to sew it, I'm just going to tell you. If you want to do lace to the bottom, Martha's Magic, leave about 1/4 inch of fabric exposed, set your zigzag on at least a 4 width and about a 1/2 to 1 length, and zigzag going off of the fabric, over the heading of the lace, off of the fabric, over the heading of the lace, and it will roll and whip in the prettiest hem you've ever seen. Now, this little scalloped hem is beautiful and easy to make. Let me share with you how it's done. First of all, you have a scallop template, which I turn up the hem just like I would turn up any hem. I fold up the hem, lay it down, and then I put my scallop template down and trace off the scallop template. Now then, I'm going to show you how you sew the blanket stitch or Madeira applique or pin stitch. I sew then through both layers of that hem, just following along the scallop. Now remember, I've got a raw edge turned up behind there, but I sew along that scallop through both layers of the hem, all the way around the skirt. And then, after that is done, here's my piece where I have all that done. Now you see, here's the sewing and here's that raw edge up here. I've done my scallop and this is the raw edge of the hem. At that point, I simply go in here and trim away the fabric right down close to the stitching. It's very easy to do. And this makes one of the prettiest, it is the easiest form of scalloped hem you can do. See, as you look at this pretty little hem, it looks like I've worked a long time, you know, folding down that proper applique. Well, guess what? I didn't. I just stitched it and I went in behind there and cut away the excess skirt. And I think that's one of the very prettiest ways to make a scallop skirt. And I especially love it when you put the tiny little rosebud and 2 little bitty green leaves at the top of every point of the scallop. I'd like for you to come along with me to my attic now, where I have a beautiful, beautiful antique white garment to share with you. This beautiful skirt I purchased at a flea market in Paris, France. Now, it's very unusual in that the skirt is very, very full, and it also has some beautiful features I'd like to share with you. Coming in here at the top, around the waistband of the skirt, there are beautiful release tucks. Oh, I think they're about 3/8 of an inch wide. They go all the way around to the back also. Now I'm going to come down the skirt where I come down and then it goes to a fancy band. And the fancy band starts with a piece of Swiss eyelet, Swiss embroideries, and I may have shared with you before that the Swiss embroideries came out of Switzerland for the first time about 1857. So it makes sense that this skirt, since it was done around 1900, would have certainly had Swiss eyelet. This is a beautiful piece of Swiss eyelet with entredeaux on either side. Now here is the interesting part. As we come on down with this very full skirt, the more release tucks, again about 3/8 of an inch wide, come down about 10 inches and then it stops. Well, now that's the way the tucks usually do. But this seamstress had something real interesting in mind to hold those release tucks in place. Let me show you if I can pull this skirt up here. There is a strip about, 5/8 of an inch wide of fabric which she has simply hand whipped in to hold those tucks in place. It also, let me turn it back for you, makes it a whole lot easier to iron with those tucks all going in the same direction underneath. Now for our Sewing from the Heart segment, I have a letter from my friend Bonnie Ward in Bellevue, Washington. She says, "Dear Martha, I volunteered my sewing skills with a 7th grade home ec class." And she had both boys and girls in the class. And she said, "So here's the scoop. The 12 boys were a lot of laughs. Some took to the machine work, twin needle and wing, faster and more confidently than the girls." And she added up here, "The girls were terrific and took to the hand embroidery faster than the boys." When it came to the embroidery, well, it was a different story. One boy spent about half the class threading a straight pin. When the Mother's Day lingerie bags were finished, they were placed in the school's main display case. Boy, were those kids proud. They loved it. On the inside pocket of the lingerie case, using my new sewing machine, I put "Love Mother's Day 1996" and the name of the child so that each child felt very special. I'll enclose a special thank you letter for you again. I really appreciate all your help. Bonnie Ward. Now, Bonnie enclosed some of the cutest thank you letters from the boys and the girls, but I thought I would read one of Bonnie's thank you letters from Spencer Walsh. "Dear Mrs. Ward, thank you for teaching me how to double stitch. That was very thoughtful of you to volunteer your time. You also made it very clear to us kids how to do the double stitch. I was only in your group once and I wish I could have been in your group again. I remember my machine was acting up, but you helped me fix it. Thank you, Spencer Walsh." You know, volunteering one's efforts and volunteering one's time with the sewing can be in so many different ways and so many different avenues. And I will truthfully tell you, I think people appreciate either teaching, such as Bonnie Ward did with these kids, or I think they appreciate things that people make for them. Thank you so much for joining me today in my sewing room, and I certainly hope you will be with me next time.